Hello, Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Kamp, President and CEO of the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce, here for your February 19th weekly legislative video update. I wanted to hit a few items that are of importance to us as our policy priorities and things that we've seen develop this past week. There's quite a bit, so I'll jump right in. The first item that I wanted to make sure I touched on was broadband. We continue to see those bills move forward. It came out of the Senate Commerce Committee. Is some concern with the funding. No money has currently been attached to any of the broadband bills. The governor is asking for 150 million over the next 3 years for a total of 450 million, which would be a significant investment. One of the biggest things we want to make sure doesn't happen is to make sure that it's not underfunded. So we see something move forward and then only see, say 15 million, which is a tenth of what is actually being asked for, and even less, obviously, of what would be needed and would not have as much of an impact. So one thing we continue to watch is not only the appropriation of that, but also the speeds, the uploads and download speeds. So that would have a lot of different opinions on that. Some people are looking 25.3, which is some of the requirements, but what we're really looking at and advocating for is 100 up and 100 down. And the reason that is it really provides the needed capacity for commercial and industrial growth throughout the state, especially industrial, as we see a lot of that go to automation and just a lot of bandwidth needed for operations in that capacity. So we'll continue to monitor that bill and push it forward in the way that we best see fit, and we'll continue to update you on that as that's one of our priority bills and one of the governor's priority bills. Another bill that I wanted to make sure I touched on is the Iowa Economic Development Authority bill. There's a lot of different pieces that they're pushing, but the one I want to touch on right now is the angel investor tax credit and the innovation funds. So that's something that Debbie, the director of Iowa Economic Development Authority, would like to see a reallocation or reprioritization of those funds. We've seen more funds go towards more demand, go towards angel investor tax credit than we have seen with some of the innovation funds. So we're hoping to push more money to the angel investor tax credit and less to the innovation funds, just because that's where we've seen the demand coming from the last few years. And Debbie has data to back that, to really say that that's a good way we need to move forward. One of the issues is for the last couple of years, a rural development component has been attached to that angel investor tax credit bill. We're hoping we've been able to decouple those two so we can move forward with the angel investor and innovation tax credit bill as a standalone issue, which would be really good for Debbie and economic developers using, and just anyone in general using those tax credits, because it would kind of reprioritize based on the demand that we've seen for those tax credit programs. So we'll continue to watch that going forward. Another thing that's really important, especially to our healthcare providers here in the area at CHA Mercy and Methodist Jenny Ed and just others who this would apply to, is there's a medical malpractice tort reform bill we are in support of. And what it would do is it would place a $1 million cap on non-economic damages for any malpractice suit. That's really, really important, especially when we look at the protections Nebraska provides versus what we have here. It's a huge competition issue for people at CHI Mercy and Methodist Jenny Ed as we try to compete for workforce between the two states. So we're fully supportive of the tort reform bill. It will be kind of a tough bill insofar as it pits the medical community versus trial lawyers. So you can kind of imagine how that may go, but we are on the side of in favor of that bill, and we will continue to do so and stand by the side of our healthcare providers. There was a TIF bill that came out about a week ago. We saw some action on that on Wednesday morning. It moved out of subcommittee. There's a lot of concerns we have about that bill. We're doing our best to kill it in the House Republican caucus, but it is the chairman's bill and it's a Ways and Means bill. So it's funnel proof. It's good until the end of session. It could get passed at the 11th, very last minute of the 11th hour at the end of session. So we just need to continue to monitor that and try to kill it within the House Republican caucus. And if we can't do it there, it wouldn't be ideal for something to pass over into the Senate, but we need to then make sure we can kill it in the Senate if needed. But what it would essentially do is it would roll back and get rid of any perpetual TIFs, regardless of slum and blight, whatever it may be. It would just get rid of all existing TIFs. There's a lot of implications that come with that, with existing bonds and financing on some of those TIFs, but then also just the increment that you have there and the loss there. It would hamper major projects going forward. It would push people to use GO bonds. And when you look at rural and urban communities, that's a big issue because some places, especially rural communities, don't have the GO bonding capacity. A lot of urban communities don't have that either. They need TIF and they need it to be flexible in the manner it currently is, to be able to best utilize that and buy down some of the costs of development projects. It's hugely important here in Council Bluffs, especially because as we compete with Nebraska for a litany of projects, TIF is one of the major tools we have at our disposal. We have a much more nimble system than they do when it comes to that incentive, and it has allowed us to win a lot of projects as a result. So we need to keep that flexibility and the nimbleness that it provides, so we can then not only compete with our friends across the river for projects, but also use it for local matches and a litany of other things. There's a lot of concerns we have about this bill. I could talk about it for an hour, but I won't do that. I'll just stop and say that we need to kill the bill. And if you know, or have relationships with any of our members in the House, especially in the Republican caucus and the majority caucus, as well as in the Senate, we really need to be reaching out and informing them of the potential negative ramifications of moving forward with a bill like this. And if you do have questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. As you can tell, I'm passionate about it. I can provide you some good information and talking points as well to be able to reach out to our legislators. Another piece that we want to focus on is the housing bill. It's a priority bill of the governor, and it's something that we've seen a lot come out of. It's got a lot of support right now, but there is some conversations about if Brownfield Grayfield will move forward in the way the governor proposed, and what that would be as a 10-year extension. It's supposed to sunset this year. And the proposal is currently a 10-year extension with doubling of the funds from 10 million to 20 million. There's some questions of the viability of it getting doubled. We'll continue to monitor that, and we'll continue to have conversations concerning that, because we think it's important to double that due to the impact it has with redevelopment projects and really building up and fostering infill development within our communities, which is an important thing to do. The childcare bills continue to move forward. They're now over in the Senate. There's a litany of them. There were 6 of them that passed. We're supportive of all of them. We're going to work to make sure that we can get them over the finish line in the Senate, whether it's coalescing around a few and pushing those forward. Whatever the mechanism is, we want to make sure that we can get those passed and get those implemented, as we know that's a huge issue, especially as it's been exacerbated by the pandemic. There is an unemployment insurance bill that has come up, and what it really goes towards or gears towards is the 1-week waiting period and the associated pay schedules with that. So it has some impacts for some of our employers. We continue to monitor that. We're in support of it, as well as Association of Business and Industry, and we'll continue to push forward for that for our large employers especially, but our members and employers in general, especially those who that most applies to. There is a PPP bill going through the state, and what it really would do is just, any grant loan, any funds that were received through PPP, is it would clean it up for the tax process. As we know, there was some changes that had to be made within the IRS guidance as that came out, so they want to make sure and solidify those at the state level to make sure that there's no tax liability or tax issues for those who receive those at the state level either. There's a flood mitigation bill that would allow counties to kind of have the same authority that municipalities do with flood mitigation. It's moving forward, but it does need to get cleaned up a bit to help move it along. We continue to monitor that bill and try to support it as best we can. As you can imagine, flood mitigation is a big issue here in our community. So that's something we'll continue to move as best we can, because it would provide an additional resource for that. Another bill that we really want to bring attention to is there was we'll call it the data center bill, and it's House File 402. And what it would essentially do is any tech company that, as it's been labeled by some of the sponsors, would censor speech, kind of as we saw after the January 6th issues at the Capitol. They would remove any incentives that they receive from the state, any incentives that those tech companies receive from the state. So think your Googles, obviously, here in Council Bluffs, your Amazon, your Facebook, your Apples, all of those people have big presences here in Iowa. Obviously, Google is the one that we work with the most here locally and will advocate the most fiercely for and in partnership with. But it's just important to note these bills are rather punitive, and we just think it's not very helpful to try to be throwing sand in the face of individuals who are investing billions of dollars in our state. It's not something that looks good from the outside looking in, and it's just not very good as far as a marketing tool as we try to attract talent to our state. These bills are, like I said, they're punitive, and they are not well received on an external basis as we look at a workforce level. So we'll continue to monitor that bill. We'll continue to oppose that bill going forward, because we want to stand with our partners at Google and those who are investing heavily in the state. And we want to make sure that they don't have any of those adverse impacts as proposed in the bill. So we will continue to monitor that, and we'll continue to work with our partners and friends at Google in doing so as well. That really kind of concludes my update for this week. There is a lot of other things happening at the legislature. It's really picking up. It's been a full steam ahead the last few weeks. It's almost been like it's a funnel week the last few weeks. But we do want to note that the first funnel, when bills have to be out of their respective committees in the House or the Senate to stay alive, unless they're appropriations bills, leadership bills, or ways and means bills, really. Um, those are things that we're going to continue to monitor because the first funnel is March 5th. So next week, we will have our meetings with legislative leadership on Tuesday from 11 to 1. That'll be a really good opportunity to talk about these and other priority issues that we have. And then we'll also have our monthly roundtable with our legislators at 11:30 to 1 next Friday. So that'll be another good opportunity to engage them prior to the first funnel on March 5th. If you have any questions or want additional clarification on any of the items I talked about or others that I may not have talked about, please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help as best I can. And we really do appreciate all of your support and your engagement and your participation in the Chamber's public policy efforts. So thank you very much and have a great weekend.